Rev up your engines! Well, you wonder how this war in Ukraine is panning out? Well, it's not going to help old Elon Musk and Tesla because since 2020, he's bought a bunch of aluminum from Russia. Well, guess what? A lot of his cars are aluminum this, aluminum that, and you got to get the aluminum from somewhere. And he's buying a bunch of it from them. Well, that's going to be a stinker if this war goes on for any period of time. The more things happen around the world, the more it's going to affect everyone else. A lot of stuff's made out of aluminum. I mean, it's lightweight metal. They put aluminum alloys in. And, hey, if they're getting a bunch of stuff from Russia, well, that's going to be a real stink now. All I know is from what I've researched the previous bans that countries have done, it generally just goes through somebody else. Then the Russian guy will sell it to some guy, and then they'll go through some place and sell it, you know. Who's to say where it's coming from? Aluminum's aluminum, what you have in your hands, you know. I don't put much faith when it comes to industrial stuff like that. Strangely enough, in World War I, the Germans were still paying a patent for every machine gun that they made to the American inventor. I think it was $1 per machine gun. They were still paying it to the American who invented the machine gun during World War II. They made their own machine guns. They were just the same ones, copies of them. Said it was a patent, and they kept paying the patent even during World War I. So strange things go on. 29 says, I got a rusty frame. What would it cost to restore it? It's a 97 Ford Explorer Scout. The frame is rusty, but it's solid with no holes. How much would it cost to have it cleaned and repainted? It's an old SUV I want to restore. Well, here's the thing. You know, a 97 Ford Explorer isn't worth that much money. And you got to make sure that you say, well, it's rusted, but it's solid. Have a frame man look at it, right? Then if he says it's solid, problem is, you know, frames are full of little holes. They're drain holes, so water gets in and drains out. The outside's rusted, so is the inside. You might get a guy with a borescope sticking in those holes that are made there. See what the inside looks like, because if it's all rusted out, there isn't squat you can do. You can't fix the inside. You can sandblast the outside and then paint it and coat it and seal it. Yes, that can be done and just price around in your area. But if the inside's rusty, that's it. You can't fix it. So it may not be worth fixing. It could be in worse shape than what you think it is. You want to get a borescope, look inside. If the inside of the frame's gone, forget it. Joey G says, I got a Subaru and it has a loud humming sound now after I hit a curb. 99% of the time, that's your wheel bearing. You hit a curb, you're going to hit the bottom of the wheel, right? Bang, bang. It's going to push it. The wheel bearing is in the middle of the hub. It can bend a little, do a little damage. And then when you go down the road, you hear, the faster you go, the faster it hums. It means you're going to need a wheel bearing. Now, while you're at it, depends on how hard you hit that curb. You could have really bent the lower control arm. Subarus aren't that strong. The metal isn't that thick. And the lower control arm that the whole thing's bolted to, when you hit that curb, usually the lower control arm gets bent. Now, it is a part you can replace. It bolts on and off. It's not like you bent the whole frame. Generally, the hit isn't big enough to bend the whole frame, but it will bend the lower control arm. You'd have to get that replaced, too. I got a video on how to change them. How to replace control arm. Scotty, watch that, and you can see if you're mechanically adept, you can try it yourself. But the humming noise is probably your wheel bearing. Alan Penrose says, I got an '06 Toyota 4Runner. Do I need oxygen sensors or new catalytic converters? It's got inefficient catalytic converter. Got 275,000 miles. Now, could it be the sensors? Could it be the catalytic converter? What should I do? Unfortunately, to analyze them correctly, you more or less have to be a mechanic like me with a freeze frame oscilloscope to analyze the data coming in and out of the oxygen sensors, and then some pressure gauges to test the catalytic converters, because they could be clogging up inside. With 275,000 miles, it could be anything. The catalytic converter is going to cost you a lot of money. They cost a small fortune. A lot of guys will just say, heck, the oxygen sensors, there's one before the cat and one after the cat. You can buy them, take them off, replace them. Maybe it'll fix it. If it doesn't, you're going to need a catalytic converter or more work. If your engine's really worn out and burns oil, it's going to keep clogging up the catalytic converters. Even if you put a new catalytic converter on, then next year it's going to burn out too, because the burned oil will clog up all the holes in the catalytic converter. So if you like riverboat gambling, hey, try one sensor. That doesn't work, try the other. And then if it doesn't, then you're into big money. But to really analyze it correctly, you need a lot of experience. Like a guy like me, it takes time, and you're going to pay mechanics about $150 an hour analyzing it. So you might might just guess with the sensors. A lot of guys do. All-wheel drive says, got a question about brake pedal switch. I got an '08 Lexus GS350. You think it's okay to get a pre-owned one from eBay? Got a Lexus, and of course, you go to the dealer, everything is outrageously expensive. It's just an on-off switch, right? But of course, it also operates the cruise control and all that crap. If you don't mind gambling, go ahead and get a used one. They don't break all that often. Just make sure it's the right switch, because each year has different switches. They got different cruise control systems, and there's a bunch of different crap on them. But I mean, what the heck? Give it a try, you know? If they want too much at the dealer, I've never had to buy one. I never saw one break on one of those. But if it's outrageously expensive, I mean, go ahead and try it. What the heck? You might try to see if Dorman makes them. D-O-R-M-E-N. Dorman's an aftermarket company. They make a lot of aftermarket parts, a lot lower than OEM. So, you know, go to any discount auto parts store that sells Dorman and say, can you order me one for this? And if they can, go ahead and get a new one. Jerome G says, when I try to accelerate hard, my engine kind of stalls out. If I accelerate slowly, it goes okay, but if I floor it, it has tendency of breaking down. What could be wrong? We'll start with the numero uno, simplest and often effective solution is change the fuel filter. If your fuel filter's clogged, it can't get a lot of volume in. And so little acceleration's okay, but not big. So change your fuel filter. Now, if it's not that, you can pressure test the fuel pump. It could be the fuel pump's getting weak, but change the filter first. Because let's say you say, well, I'm going to pressure test the fuel pump first. Well, if you pressure test it and the filter's clogged, it'll have low pressure. You replace a fuel pump that might cost you 800 bills and then find out it was just the filter. So you change the filter first. Now, if it's not that, pressure test the catalytic converter. Have a mechanic do. You take out the oxygen sensor, put in a pressure gauge. If the pressure's high, it means the cat's clogged up and you'll need a new catalytic converter. Also, dirty fuel injectors could do that too. You could put some fuel injector cleaner in the gas tank. Also, a bad mass airflow sensor, which you can also clean first. I got a video, make your car run better with a little spray cleaner, shows how you can spray clean the mass airflow sensor. Even that can do it. So try all those and pray it's the simplest thing, a clogged fuel filter. It often is. Steering driving says, my traction and engine lights come on and off. I got a 2012 Malibu. It says misfire 301, 302, and now the traction engine light comes on and the reader shows no codes. I'm confused. All right, well, the way software is written on a lot of the modern cars, including yours, is if your check engine light comes on, in the case P301, 302, meaning cylinder number 1 and cylinder number 2 were misfiring. When that happens, many times it will also turn on your traction light because they're deliberately set up that if your vehicle isn't running right, your traction control system will not operate correctly. And so it turns that system off because it's worried that something will really have a problem. It'll be even more dangerous if your car isn't running right and then it tries to put the traction control in. So it turns the traction control system off. What you got to worry about is fixing the PO301 and 302. Why is it misfiring on those two cylinders? And pray it's a bad ignition coil or a bad spark plug and not a head gasket starting to blow, because the Chevy 2.4 liter engines are notorious for blowing head gaskets. So you want to pray it's a spark plug or ignition coil. You might change them on cylinder 1 and 2 and pray that fixes it. If you do fix the check engine light, odds are your traction control light won't come on anymore because that's added on. And if the traction control system really did have a problem, when you scanned it, you would have a code, and you don't have a code. So I'm assuming it's because of the misfires, and you often see that in modern cars. Judy says, how much would it cost to fix a wheel bearing in my '06 Ford Explorer? The rear wheel bearing assembled, the wheel off the back, and you unbolt, take the brakes off, and there's just 4 bolts. Then with the slide hammer, you pull it off. There's a long sub-axle there. The bearing's pressed and has to be pressed off and on. Now, if you do it yourself, it's kind of hard to press them on and off. Machine shops do that. You could take it to a machine shop. But if you're going to pay a mechanic to do that job, guys charge an awful lot of money. You're probably going to pay $400 or $500. But I mean, you can buy the bearing for $50, $60. If you want to take it apart, or somebody you know does that work, it's not that expensive to do yourself. Pressing it on and off is the only hard part. Somebody's really mechanically apt. It's not that hard. You can cut the old one off with a grinder. Then you get the new one. You get a long piece of pipe and you can hammer it on. That's what we did in my grandfather's day. We didn't have a machine press. We used a big piece of pipe and we hammered it back on, and that can be done too. Somebody has creativity, they can do it. But if you're going to pay a mechanic, probably $500 a side or so. It says, where's Scotty's bell? You ring a bell at the end of your videos. Where's that bell? That bell is in Maine, and it is a museum. It's in a nautical museum, and it was an actual bell used on a fog boat to warn people. Like, it costs a lot of money to make a lighthouse, but you can get a boat pretty cheap, a lot cheaper than building a lighthouse. So they would send the boat out and they'd moor it, and they had a giant bell. It was foggy. Some guy had to sit there ding, ding, ding all the time. I guess maybe he had earplugs or something in so he didn't go deaf. And that came off an actual fog boat that rang it off the coast of Maine to warn people they're going to smash into the rocks because it's all foggy. So it is. It's an actual bell there. The lady let me ring it. It says, do not ring bell, but I asked the woman who was running the museum, told her who I was. She said, go ahead and ring it. So I went out and rung it. Boy, that thing rang. You could hear it in the fog, that's for sure. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.